Hey guys, it's Chris at Highline Guitars. You're watching another one of my YouTube guitar building videos. If you're new to my channel, welcome. I hope that by the end of this video, I'll have earned your subscription. What I'm going to be covering in today's video is part 11 of my V-shaped guitar build. And what I'm going to be doing is making the body on my CNC machine. So let's head out to the shop, get started. The wood that I chose for this guitar body is alder. And in episode 8, I talked a little bit about how I prepared the blank, and basically that meant I planed it to 1 3/4 inches thick. I joined the edges that are glued together, and then I combined the two, glued them up to form a blank that is 18 inches wide and 22 inches in length. And then what I had to do next was to mark the vertical center line on the blank, and this is what I use to line up the blank on my CNC machine. Typically what I need to do with a part is measure and mark both the horizontal and the vertical center lines. But in this case, the horizontal center line is actually the glue seam, so I don't need to mark that. But I do need to mark the vertical center line. And then what I'll do is I will extend that line down the sides. So I'll have lines that are running down the sides of the blank, and then I'll have that glue seam on each end. And those are what I use to line up the blank on my CNC wasteboard. Every time I make a guitar on my CNC machine and show the videos on YouTube of the process, people will ask me why I'm not using a pin alignment system. And I've used them in the past, and they work well, but really where they shine is when you're making the same parts over and over and over, and you're cutting those parts out of the same size blank every single time. And every guitar that I build is unique and different. I rarely, almost never, make the same designs twice. I'm always building new concepts and new ideas. And as a result, I'm using different size blanks. Also, a lot of times when I'm shopping for lumber at my local lumber supplier, I'll find a great piece of wood that I've got to have for a guitar body. And it may not allow me to make a blank that is the same size as blanks I've used in the past. It may be something that's completely different. So the pin alignment system won't work. But what does work every single time is to draw those horizontal and vertical center lines and then extend them down the sides so that I can line them up with the engraved center lines on the wasteboard of my CNC machine. It just makes it very easy. And then I just use simple clamps. These are sacrificial clamps. If you look closely, you notice they've been chewed up quite a bit by the CNC machine. That's no big deal because they're cheap, plentiful, and I can even make them myself. But I prefer to use this over any other method. I know there are some folks out there who like to use double-sided sticky tape or the famous masking tape CA glue trick, which is an old wood turner's trick. However, I've found those methods to be hit and miss. And when it's miss, it's a disaster. But clamping always can be assured of affixing that blank to the wasteboard so that it's not going to move anywhere. You'll not only notice that I'm using clamps to hold down the workpiece, but I'm also placing clamps on the sides. And the reason for that is because when I'm carving with the CNC machine, I'm pushing it as fast and making as deep cuts with the maximum amount of step over as I can. And that can really put a lot of force on that blank. And I've actually had the blanks move even when I thought it was firmly clamped into place. And I've also had the wasteboard itself move. And if you look carefully, you'll see small clamps with the little green toggles on the front of the wasteboard. They're also on the back side. And then I have wedges between the frame of the CNC machine and the wasteboard to keep that wasteboard from shifting around as the part is being carved. And that's really a feature or a reality that you have to potentially deal with when you have a CNC machine that has as much power as this one does. Once the blank has been clamped down securely, the first thing I have to do is I have to home the CNC machine to the lower left corner of the machine. And there are limit switches that are built into the machine. And once the spindle and the gantry has moved down to that lower left front position, those limit switches are tripped. And that sends a signal to the controller and tells the machine precisely where the center of the spindle is. From there, I can numerically jog the machine to the right, right to the center of the wasteboard on the x-axis, and then I'll jog it back on the y-axis and place the spindle right over the very center of my workpiece. From there, I can probe the bit, which is a process that tells the machine exactly where the tip of the bit is off of the surface of the blank that I'm about to carve. And then I can numerically jog the machine forward to the front of my blank and then over to the left corner, which is going to be the XY home position, the bit already being in the Z home position. So when I jog it, I'm jogging it 11 inches forward, because remember the blank is 22 inches long, so half of that is 11 inches. And then from the center over to that left corner, I'm jogging it 9 inches, which is half the 18-inch width of the blank. So once that's done, I have the spindle and the tip of the bit homed and positioned in the XYZ start position. So from there, I can send my G-code and begin the carving process. The first carving operation is going to be to drill some very tiny holes all over the guitar body. And what these holes are, they're basically the holes for mounting the control cavity cover, the Floyd Rose tremolo spring cavity cover, the 9-volt battery box, and then I'm using a Fender Stratocaster style jack plate, and so the holes will be drilled for that. And I'm just going to use a 1/16 of an inch diameter drill bit, and the machine will drill those holes in just a matter of minutes. After I drilled the holes, I had to switch out the bit from that 1/16 of an inch drill bit to a 1/4 inch diameter 2-flute spiral downcut bit. And what I'm going to be doing with that bit is carving the start for the cavities. Now what I mean by that is I'm not going to carve the full depth of the cavities. I'm just going to cut into the surface of the wood to a depth of about 1/4 of an inch or 1/8 of an inch, I can't remember which. But what that does by using a downcut bit is it prevents the bit from pulling wood fibers up and creating fuzzy edges and running the risk of tearing out pieces of wood. So it'll make a nice clean cut on those surfaces. Now you'll notice I don't have a dust shoe connected to my machine. Now the X-Carve Pro CNC machine comes with a dust shoe and a dust hose and everything that you need to extract dust as you're carving. I normally will use this when I'm doing my cutting operations to keep the area clean. However, when I'm doing video, I like to leave the dust shoe off so that you can actually see the bit cutting into the wood. Otherwise, all you're going to be seeing is a brush moving around the surface, and you're not going to actually see anything getting cut. To finish the cavities, I'm going to switch from that downcut bit to a 1/4 inch diameter 2 flute spiral upcut bit. And what an upcut bit does is the exact opposite of the downcut. Where the downcut is pushing the chips down and pushing the wood down, the upcut bit is pulling the wood chips up and out of the area where the carving is being done. And this is just a more efficient and safer way to cut deeper pockets. Because if you don't extract those chips out of the pocket as it's being cut, you can damage the bit, and you can also jam up the machine and cause it to lose steps. Now, of course, this all depends on the power and strength of your machine, and I've never had that issue with my X-Carve Pro, but I think it's always a good idea for the most efficient cuts to use the proper bit, and that way I can remove all those chips. And really, it's not an issue when using a dust chute because it just sucks away all the chips as they're being cut. Now, I always like to carve the pockets into the back of the guitar first. That's the first carving operation when I'm making a body. And then once that work is done, I can loosen the clamps, clean up all the wood chips that are piled up around the blank, and then I can flip the blank over and then re-register those center lines that are drawn down the sides of the blank with the center lines that are engraved in the wasteboard. Then I'll clamp it all down again, and I'm ready to start cutting the pockets and the shape of the front of the guitar. So once again, I'm going to use my 1/4 inch 2 flute spiral downcut bit to begin the process of cutting those cavity shapes. And I'm talking about the neck cavity, the pickup pockets, as well as drilling the holes for the controls. So I'll use that bit just to cut a shallow depth into the wood to get that started. And then once that's finished, I can then switch the bit for the upcut bit and then finish out those cavities more efficiently. The next carving operation is going to create those bevels that I designed into this guitar body, and it's also going to cut the perimeter V shape of the body. And that perimeter shape is going to be cut all the way through the 1 3/4 inch thickness of the body blank. And to do that, I'm using a 1/4 inch diameter 2 flute spiral upcut bit that has an extra long reach. This one, I think it's about 3 inches. So I'll use that bit to cut all the way through. Now, as I cut through, there will be tabs that are linking the blank itself to the cut body, because obviously the blank would remain clamped down to the wasteboard, but once that bit has cut all the way through the blank, the body would then be loose and it would fly around on the CNC machine, and it could actually become a dangerous missile in the shop. So to prevent that from happening, there are tabs. It's kind of like when you build a plastic model car, you open up the box and there are all these sprues with all the parts connected to the sprues. It's sort of the same basic idea. And once the carving operation is complete, then those tabs would be cut to liberate the body from the blank. This last carving operation actually involves 2 separate operations that are combined into one. The first is the rough cut, which does most of the cutting and shaping. But then once that's done, a finishing pass is done to really smooth out the surface. And the finishing pass typically takes much longer because the bit is only moving over with each pass about 6% of its diameter. So it can take a while to get that done. However, once it's finished, I could easily just sand the surface with 220 grit sandpaper and I'd be done. So it's a much more efficient way to get a clean, smooth surface prior to actually doing the sanding and finishing work. And once I have finished the cutting operations, I can unclamp the blank and cut those tabs that are holding the body into the blank, thereby liberating the body. Well, guys, that's all the time I've got for this episode. I hope you found this to be interesting, entertaining, and informative. In the next episode, which will be part 12, I'm probably going to be doing some sanding and then mating the neck of the guitar to the body that I just carved. and then I'll proceed from there. So who knows where that's going to lead us. But we're getting closer. We're moving forward. And pretty soon I'll start installing all of the components on the guitar, and it's going to start to look more like a guitar. So I hope you've enjoyed this video. If so, please consider giving it a thumbs up. If you're new to the channel, again, welcome. I hope I've earned your subscription. And of course, if you'd like to help support my channel so I can keep making these videos, be sure to head over to eguitarplans.com. There's a link in the description below, and you can purchase plans for a guitar or the tools that we use to make guitars. Even if you don't plan to make it, it helps to support the channel. You can also visit my merch shelf, which is displayed right below the description for this video. And there you can buy a lot of those same plans, but you can also get t-shirts as well. So any little bit helps and keeps this channel functioning. So until the next episode, as always, take care, stay safe, and I hope you'll be back for the next episode.